Hello everybody, this is our final result, and just I wanted to show that there's this one that we are going to achieve. So there's one important note that you need to keep in mind, and that is this course is equipped with some project files. And if you open the project files folder, you are going to get these files. So the first one is some of the Blender add-ons that I use, and for getting them, they're free and you do not need to pay anything. Wherever you see a price tag or something, just enter 0 and you should be fine downloading them. And this is something credit to some of the reference images that I used, and this is the ZBrush files. You can download them again for free, some of the ZBrush brushes that we use, and then some stencils that we do not use a lot in this course, but you can use them just in the texturing phase. You're going to get these, and then the height map as well. We are going to use a lot of height maps for sculpting in ZBrush, and you're going to get these files, and whenever they are referenced in the tutorial, for example, when sculpting wood, we use the height map number 1. You just select this and bring it to ZBrush. Okay, this is the final result that we are getting. I just wanted to remind you that you can download the project files and use them along the way. Okay, see you in the creation process. Okay, here we are in Blender, and we are going to start with the blockout, because it's very important to start with the blockout, because whenever you have the scale and everything just corrected, it would be a lot easier to decide on what you're going to create. Okay, and here's the human scale reference that I have. It's roughly about a bit close to 2 meters. If I bring in the default cube, which is 2 meters, you can see that it's roughly about the scale of 2 meters. And that is the scale that we're going to use, and that is to decide how the scale of the object is going to be. So let's take a look at references. Here's the reference board that I gathered. They are some of these images that are very important for the composition. For example, so this is the overall look that we're going for. We are going to create something like this, a round kind of, well, like so, but the stones are going to be jagged and rough. Okay, and then there's going to be a roof, and that roof is going to be something like this one, which has some shingles. But since it's going to be old and really belonging to past times, there's going to be a lot of irregularities placed in there. And for the roof, it's going to be something like this, and its stones are going to be jagged like so, and the overall composition is going to be something like this. It's going to be the stone piece, there's going to be a pavement that is going to be stone. We are going to have a couple of pillars holding this together, and then something like this, a structure and a rope, and that rope may be maybe, for example, a rope or a chain. Okay, and now let's take a look at the reference that I have for these stones. They're going to be something like this, with some jagged stones stacked up like so, and then a bit of mortar or cement holding them together. It's going to be something like this. The main one that I have in mind is something like this. And these are for guide on how these stones are going to look like. Okay, then we are going to have a rope, and that rope is going to be something like this. For example, you see it has the bucket connected to it. We might create the bucket or we might not, because we create the wood, and you can use the same approach and create the bucket yourself. But for now, let's worry about wood. And the wood, you see, is going to be something very rough. And these are the references that we have for the wood. because it's going to be something belonging to old ages. We need to make sure that it's rough enough. And then for shingles, I have this one in mind, although it's not going to be something like this, but a bit close. And if I combine it, for example, with such a look, it would be a great idea. And we are going to be creating that for game environments. And we're going to make sure that the optimization is there as well. For example, in case of creating these shingles like so, I'm not going to create maybe 100 shingles and sculpt them individually. That will take a lot of time and would waste a lot of resources, for example, texture, geometry, whatever. And then we are going to create, for example, if we have 100 shingles in here, we're going to create maybe 4 or 5 and then blend them together in a natural way to really make sure that the textile density is going to be much better, and then it's going to be high resolution as well. So for the stones as well, it's going to be the same thing. Let me bring this, for example, if this is composed of 100 stones, we're not going to create them individually because that would take a lot of time and really a lot of texture memory and a lot of really unique results that we are going to create. We are going to create maybe 4 or 5 stones and then blend them together. And then later on, if we saw that there's a repetition, we will sculpt over those. So it would be much easier to sculpt 100 stones in a way that, for example, we create 5 stones and bring them to 70-80% of completion, and then duplicate them and continue from there instead of creating 100 stones from scratch. Okay, here is what we need to know. And now let's start creating by first defining the borders. I'm going to create something like this. Of course, it's going to be round. I'm not going to give it a shape or anything. It's going to be round. So let's bring in a cylinder. And we're comparing that against the scale of this human in here. Okay, now let me bring in this. It's 2 meters. Let's go for 4 meters by 4 meters. No, this is too much. Let's go for 3 by 3. And let's see if the player is able to walk on this. Okay, a scale of 3 is good. And of course, there's going to be a bad geometry in here. Do not worry, we are going to fix that in ZBrush. So it's going to be, let me see, 3 meters by 3 meters, and the height is now 10 centimeters. I do not want it. Let's go for 0.2, and 0.2 in meters equals 20 centimeters. Okay, now let's shade smooth for the look of it, and then duplicate and bring it up. I want it to have something like a staircase effect. And then bring this to here. And then on top of this is going to be our main well placed, this one. So let me bring in a cube and then scale this cube to a place that we see fit. And it's going to be placed along center. And one of these add-ons that I provided the link to you is the interactive tool. And since this is not a beginner tutorial, you can really spend time and see what it looks like. So we created a shortcut for quick origin and edit origin. So the quick origin has been set to Alt S, and Alt S, if you remember, was the reset scale. I just removed that and set that to quick origin. So whenever I'm selecting, for example, this edge and Alt S, you see it brings the pivot to here. If I place Alt S in here, it's going to bring that to the center. If I select this face, Alt S, it's going to bring the pivot to the center of this face. So that is this quick origin that belongs to the interactive tools. So I place the pivot there, and now if I scale along Z, we are getting, no, let's go for Z only. Now we are getting a sense of a scale of how this is going to be. So now let's go for these two as well. Let's make sure that the foundation is strong enough. Okay, now I'm going to go for a mirror. So let's go to modifiers and look for mirror. And it's going to be along X. So let's select this one as the mirror object. Okay. So now whatever change we do on this is going to be duplicated to that side as well. So let me select this and try to scale that a bit. Now you see the changes are getting reflected there as well, because this is a mirror and I haven't collapsed the modifier. So let's see, looks like it could be like so. And then for the main round piece in here, let me duplicate this, scale, and then let's first place the pivot in here, bring it up, okay, and then scale it in Z. So now I believe that if I take this and bring it closer to here, and if I compare that to the scale of the human, let's bring that, okay, and then scale that a bit to match the proportions. So now I'm saying that it's going to be all right. Now let's do something. If I take this and bring it to the mix, so that, for example, later on we create something like this, that the stones really hold this wood together, then it's going to be a lot better. So now we are in a phase that we are testing the ideas. Now for this, we are going to make sure that we have this inside piece corrected as well. So let's extrude and scale to the side on the size of the stones. Okay, I'm liking that. And of course, if you want, you can go for different proportions. Now let me take this and scale that like so, and then make sure that it has a foundation as well. So let me create a vertex in here and then extrude this along normal. Let me take this, extrude along normals. Okay, so that the wood has a bit of foundation as well. Okay, let me take these rows of vertices, bring that to here, and then create another and bring and then extrude this along normal as well. So do not worry, we might have some geometry problems in here. Let's go into edit mode, and if the geometry was problematic, we will return back and try to fix it. Or it doesn't need fixing as well, because it's going to be dynameshed in ZBrush, and that is going to solve a lot of those geometrical issues as well. So now I decided to take this one and bring that down in Z a bit, because I'm going to create a roof, and that roof is going to have these pieces like so. So let's decide on how that is going to be. I'm really liking this one. You see, there's a vertical piece of wood, and then this one. Let's try to create something like that. Okay, let's first take this and duplicate, separate by selection. Okay, now let's bring the pivot in here and then try to extrude that and then rescale it so that it's something like a metal piece, or basically whatever that we can place in here to hold the stones together. Okay, let's duplicate and bring it to top, and then make sure that it has roughly about the same scale as the foundation wood. Okay, now I'm going to create this wooden piece in here, these shingles, but before that we need to make sure that we have a strong foundation for it. So now let me take this one, duplicate, rotate 90 degrees to make sure that it's perpendicular around the base. And now I'm going to create another mirror. Let's search for mirror, and this time it's going to be a long Y, and it's going to be a long Y because I haven't really set the transformation reset there. Of course, if I set the rotation to be changed, it might give us a different result. So now let's go for Y, the other one, and let's see. Okay, it's going to be in Z because we didn't set this one to be resetted. So if I reset that by resetting this scale, if I press Y, now it's going to be corrected. Okay, now I'm saying that there's too much distance in here. It's too long because we are going to create something like this triangular piece there. And if I rotate like maybe 45 degrees and bring it to here, and then duplicate it to the other side, let me create another mirror. Let's see. Let's set the pivot to be this one. Okay. Now I'm saying that this one is too much. So let's first rescale and then rescale this in Z and take these triangular pieces and bring them to fit that scale. Okay, now very basic block out done, but let's do something. I'm going to duplicate these and then rotate them like maybe 35 degrees, or let's go for 10 more. Let's go for, now it's 45 degrees, and then try to scale that based on local. So from global to local, so that it just rescales along that. Okay, but we need to bring that and take this one, rescale. Okay, I want that to have a purpose so that it's not floating randomly in the composition. I want that, for example, later on to carve some information in here. So let's scale that in Z to bring it to here, and then another mirror. Okay, this one, let's go for the other direction. Let's set the pivot to be this one. Okay, correct. Now we are deciding on really the rough blockout. Later on, we will fix these issues. For example, something like this that has some problems. Let me see. So now let's do something. I'm going to pick this one and then rescale. But before that, take this, Shift D to duplicate, P, separate by selection, so that we have this one in place. And now apply all of these modifiers. Remove that, bring this to the center. Okay, and then scale along X. Okay, now you see this is going to be something like a blockout of the piece that we are going to create. So now, in this center as well, let's do something. I'm going to scale that in Y, and then create a cylindrical piece in here. So I'm going to bring the pivot to here. So pivot to geometry. Okay. I'm going to bring this world center to here. So to select it. Okay. Now if I bring anything, for example, a cylinder, it's going to be spawned in here. Perfect. Let me rescale, and this is going to be, so now let me take this and bring that to the center, and I'm going to scale that just a bit. I'm taking a look at this and comparing that. So let's reset the rotation and scale that along X, like so. Shade smooth. And then a bit of more scaling. But before that, let me take this one and just extrude. And now take this and make sure that we are selecting everything, or extrude along normals. And then rescale like so. I want to make sure that it doesn't go beyond these borders. Okay, now let's use the mirror to bring that to the other side. Take this face and in X, bring it to 0. Or let's use mirror, it's going to be fixing those issues. And make sure that we set the pivot to be around this one. Okay. And then we are going to have this kind of a wheel that people use to bring the bucket up from the well. Okay, again, because the pivot is in here, the origin, I'm going to bring in a cylinder, rotate that 90 degrees. And bring it to here. Apply anything, shade smooth. And this is going to be the handle. Okay, but do not worry, we are going to refine all of these later on. For now, it's only making sure that the ideas are going to be fine. For example, now I decided that I want to make this one, rescale this one a bit, because whenever I see, I'm saying that it needs a bit of rescaling. Okay, and then this one as well. Like so. So let's see if I'm going to place this one to here. No, it's going to be too repetitive. And you see the geometry is not correct at all. Do not worry, we are going to take care of that. And then you see, whenever we're taking a look, there are some inner wood pieces in here as well. For example, these vertical ones. We could create them, or we could duplicate the same pieces when we sculpted them and duplicate them to here, because you see they're not going to be seen. So creating them would be a waste of resources. So we will see what we're going to do later. For now, it's only thinking about constructing the good block out. So now I see that there's a vertical wood in here as well. This one. So again, I'm going to take the same thing, rotate. Let me rotate 90 degrees and just rescale that and place it here. Okay, do not worry, later on we are going to create connections for these so that they look more natural. But for now, it's only a matter of really guessing the big shapes and see what we are going to create. Okay, now let me take these vertices and just collapse. You can press M and collapse. Okay, of course I should have first created an inset and then take these two, M, collapse, like so. And then, but before that, let me bring that to here and create some edges around that. So let's do something. I'm going to select whatever I have here. So now I'm just going to create one side and then duplicate it to the other side. But first, let me delete this half as well. Okay, now I'm going to just take these two, join, and then delete this one as well. So now, by creating half of it or 1/4, we are able to duplicate it over to the other side many times and create what we need. So let me just take all of these, delete, take this two as well, or let's bring the knife tool and bring that. So now we have 1/4, and when we made sure that it's all right, we will mirror that to create other halves. Okay, now let me do something. I'm going to leave one. Of course, I'm going to leave these to be because there's a silhouette in here. And then let me remove these ones, leave one, or leave two, and remove. Okay, now we have something like that. We do not need to be exactly the same. We just need to be something that looks all right. So let's bring in the mirror. Okay, and then it's going to be alongside Y. Perfect. And now another mirror. This time it's going to be along Z. Okay, perfect. Now we have this side created, and we could even try to remove some of these. For example, let me take this one and remove and bring that. Okay, if this is something that you want, you can keep it, but I see that in here we have 4 planks. And in here you see the planks are square, but in here you see that the planks get thinner as they get to here. So let me remove this half and this half and remove what we have here in the center. Okay, that's a design choice. You could leave it or you could just okay. Now another, let's mirror alongside Y. Another mirror, this one along Z. Okay, another one. Okay, perfect. Now we have this side created. Let's remove all of them. And then take these, go to loop tools, and there should be a bridge option. Perfect. And now this one as well, loop tools, bridge. And if you do not have loop tools, you can go edit, preferences, and in add-ons, just search for loop tools, activate it, and you're going to get the loop tools activated for yourself. Okay, now there's a silhouette in here, but we need to scale that along X just a bit. Okay, and then what we could do is just placing some squares in here. So let me bring in a cube, scale that. Let's rotate that 35 degrees. Make sure that your pivot is set to local. And then all you need to do is placing that here. So this is something that looks okay. And then take, rotate 90 degrees. And I'm just looking to see if I like this design or not. So let's do something. Let's take these. And I'm going to remove that and scale this more. And duplicate 90 degrees. And just take a look because I do not want that to be so pronounced. So and then let's rescale this along to match with this here. So let's take everything, merge by distance. Okay, it's all right. Now let's take these inset, press I once more to make sure that it's one inset, so that all of them get inserted just like the same. Okay, now let's do something. Let's take this, bring that to here. And maybe we could create some handles for here. So let me take this. I'm going to take this line, bring my origin to here, to this edge, and then create a cylinder that is going to be rescaled a lot to create something like a handle that people can get and try to basically rotate this to get the water and bucket and those kind of maneuvers. So let's see if I can duplicate it to here. Okay, I'm going to leave that be like so. Now it's enough for this lesson. I'm going to pause, and in the next one we will go and try to refine this even more and maybe create shingles, block out for them, and see what is going on there. Okay, see you in the next one. Okay, everybody, now we are basically reaching to a place that the initial blockout is okay, and we need to go and refine that even more. So one thing that I didn't like about this is that, you see, the silhouette is so sharp. All of the lines are perfect 90-degree without anything, just like they have been created very much by PC. So in order to make sure that they look more authentic, I'm going to just change the silhouette a bit. For example, let me duplicate, remove and remove. Let's see what we have here. Okay, let me rotate 90 degrees, bring that to the center, and I'm going to apply anything. Okay, now we need to scale that along X. Okay, so that there's this one holding these shingles together. But now you see that's too much of sharp lines, and I do not like the way that it looks. So one way to fix some of these issues would be to create more vertices. Let me go into edit mode, add more vertices, and use some of the deformation modifiers, or even try to randomly deform that to create the shape that you want. So let me apply the rotation and the scale, and there should be a simple deform modifier. Okay, let's go for such a value. Now let's duplicate that again. This time I'm going for bend. So let's bend it. Okay, it's good, but we need to rotate that to make sure that it's bent as well. But the bend isn't going to be too sharp or too strong. Okay, this way the silhouette, you see, is broken. It has characteristics. It has some lines that are not just like CG lines, because you see in here there are a lot of deformation in the silhouette, and we need to capture these as much as possible. So we need to make sure that we create deformation in a ways that it really creates a good result. So for something like this well, we are going to create rocks and then bring them. It's going to create deformation for this one and this one as well. It's going to cause deformation. Now let's go for this wood, apply the rotation and the scale. Okay, and then let's do something. I'm going to bring a lot of edges, and these edges are to make sure that it's going to deform well. So let's go bring in a deform modifier, simple deform, but we need to make sure that we bring that before the mirrors so that it's going to affect to all of them. See, if I bring that, it's going to take all of them as one mesh and deform them. But if I bring that to here first, it's going to apply the deformation to here and then duplicate that with that. So let's bring the bend. Okay. And then rotate that. Scale that along X so that we have a bent wood. So let's do something. I'm going to add a subdivision, Control 1 to add one level of subdivision, but I need to bring that before the deformation happens. So make sure that it's simple. No, let's see. Okay, this way the bend occurs to be much more natural. Or let's disable the deformation, global, okay. Now let's apply the mirror and take a look at the silhouette. That's fine. So let's do something. I'm going to disable the mirror for now and scale that. So now it's better. So now we have the silhouette, and later on we will carve the place for this one. So for now it's okay. Now let's see what else we could change to make the silhouette more interesting. Of course, a lot of it is going to be decided in ZBrush, but for now, so let's do something. I'm going to take this. Let's see what we have. Okay, apply this because I need to take this one as the pivot. Okay, now whenever I try to rotate this, it's going to be around that pivot. So of course we should have merged that. So let's go before applying the mirror. Okay, and then let's see what we have. Take this face, remove, and now if I apply the mirror and take this, remove, okay, it's done. There was a face which was preventing us from having a good deformation. Okay, now let's see. I'm going to bring the pivot to here so that the deformation happens from that way. So let's go for mesh deform, or excuse me, I should have gone for simple deform. Okay, now let's go for bend first. So it looks like we need to apply the rotation first so that the bend happens in the way that we want. Okay. Now the bend is there and we have much more interesting silhouette to work with. And of course, we will place the shingles in a way that they follow the same silhouette. So let's go for a more bend and then duplicate. And let's go for twist on a very small number. And if you want to affect all of them without affecting one shingle and then duplicating, you could add simple deform after those mirror modifiers. Okay, let's go for bend, and you see now it just changes all of them. And let's set the origin to be in the center. Okay, let's leave that be because later on we're going to fix that. So because now we need to apply a bit of more bend. Okay. And then let's do something. I'm going to scale that in local. Let me just turn off the basically mirrors and then scale that like so. But then we need to rescale that in directions that we do not want. Okay. Now it's a lot better. And now this is the same thing. Let me disable all of these mirrors, take this one, remove, so that when we merge that and apply, it's going to be well placed and merged. So let me remove that, and this one as well, completely take all of the geometry and bring the good amount of edges to make sure that we are able to have a good deformation. Okay, now the simple deform, just a bit, and then Control D or Shift D, excuse me, to duplicate and go for bend. Apply the rotation. Let's rotate that. So let's rotate and apply rotation. I just want to make sure that this one is just following the same shape. Apply the rotation. Okay, now it's better. -90 degrees in here as well. But now the bend is too strong. Let's go for 0. Not so much twist. Okay, you see here by deforming the shapes, we are getting good results. So now, let's go for more deformation. And in here, definitely we need to, let's see. Let's remove that and take this one and bring it up. Scale it along Z to make sure that it reaches to this point. Okay, now then we have this one. Let's go rescale. And rotate. Okay, now I see that we could, let me zoom. These woods need to be placed inside this holder, this metal holder, for storytelling purposes. So let's just, okay, make sure that they are included in this parts. Okay, perfect. Now let's see without those visualization errors. Okay, now I'm going to mirror this to this side to complete it. Mirror and let the pivot to be here. Okay, perfect. Of course, if you just go and apply these rotation values, it's going to be deformed because we have used these simple deforms and we haven't applied those modifiers. And if you apply them, you might need to go for another vector to go with. But for now, it's okay. So now, let's see what we need more. I'm just thinking about bringing this over to here. So let me bring that. And then we need to take these that have the modifier. So let's do something. Instead of that, I'm going to take all of them without that handle and then bring that over because that is using the modifier, the mirror modifier, and then it's going to be all right. Okay, let me just take this, take these vertices, bring them to here, and then take this one and bring it back. And then these ones. Okay, and then I'm taking this one and try to rescale it. Okay, and this is going to be cement. We are going to duplicate the rocks here and there, and then a sculpt on this to make sure that it's the cement that is just taking the stones together. So now I'm happy with the block out so far, and the only remaining thing that we have here is the shingles. So this is what I'm going for, such a look. So for the shingles, let me bring in a cube, bring that to the center, and just try to create some random shingles. And maybe we create some variations. Okay. Let's apply the rotation and the scale. And just right click, subdivide sometimes to make sure that whenever we deform this, it's going to work all right. So let me duplicate and then take these, go for this one, which is proportional editing. And if I take and try to change, it's going to take the mesh as well. So use the mouse wheel to control the circle of influence and just try to deform the surface of this one. And just make sure that you have variations of shingles. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 we create. take all of them and then take this. Okay, I'm just trying to create some variations. And when we made sure that they are sculpted and textured, we will return back and try to place them here in order to save geometry and texture. So now let's create one that it's not affected too much. So these two are identical. Okay, 5 is enough. And later on, we will return back and try to array these. So now, for the rocks that we are going to create, I'm going to use a default Blender add-on to generate the base mesh for us. So if we go and try to generate the base mesh in ZBrush, that would be valid as well. If we create, for example, some cubes or cylinders or whatever and bring them to ZBrush and try to sculpt there, it's okay. But if you go to preference and for add-ons, you can search for extra and there's the extra object. If you enable that and Shift A go to mesh, you are able to get rock generator. This way we are able to generate some basic shapes of rocks that we are going to place here. And this is going to be the cement. We are generating the rocks and then placing them around in here and then fill that with cement in ZBrush. And this one is going to be stone as well. We are going to completely sculpt this in ZBrush. So let me expand this even more. And this one as well. Okay, so that we have more rows of geometry to sculpt. It's going to take more, but it's going to be more natural as well. So now I'm going to bring the rock generator. Let me take all of these, bring them in a folder, call it blockout. Okay, and then remove that and bring this origin to the center. And if I go in here, rock generator, okay, you see it tries to create some rock shapes. Just go generate a couple of them and change the scale. Okay, now let's separate them. It has generated, you see, a very, very basic rock shape. Of course, stone shape. We could take some of them, for example, 4 or 5, and then try to sculpt on them. So this one has a lot of good planar changes. I'm going to take it. This one, let's take it. This one as well is very generic. This one is so obvious, I'm not going to take it. And this one is just like this one. Let's remove this one, generic. Okay, we have 5 different stones that we could take and sculpt. Okay, here they are. Let me just bring these to here and bring these as well, so they are just on a greater scale. So let's bring this scale down and try to see if they could match here. Okay, this is the way that we're going to place rocks. We just create some stones, duplicate, mirror, whatever, to make sure that they are placed nicely, and then sculpt in between on this mesh to make sure that it's looking like cement or mortar or basically whatever. So let me make sure that they are smaller. apply the modifiers. So instead of that, let's go to Edit, Preference, and just search for Modifier Tools. Okay, it brings here. Take all of these, apply all, and now all of the modifiers are applied with little to no effort. So let's make sure that the scales are different. Okay, and then bring these here and these ones here. So here's the method that we are going for. This is the blockout. We make sure that we sculpt on them, and these are the kits. And when we make sure that the kits are sculpted, we place them the way that they should be. Okay, but before that, let's do something. Take all of these as well and apply modifier. Okay, and later on, when we, for example, bring this to ZBrush and try to split by parts, it's going to separate them so that we could go and try to sculpt on them. So now I feel like the blockout part is done. And when we make sure that the sculpt is done, we will return back and try to unwrap and basically whatever is needed to create it. So now let me take these and bring them to blockout folder. Done. Okay, and then I'm going to select all of these and try to export using FBX or OBJ. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is exporting them for ZBrush. I'm going for OBJ because it has one option to triangulate these meshes. Because for example, this one, if I take a look, you see there's an n-gon in here. If you bring that to ZBrush, it might need some modifications, but if you triangulate them before basically exporting them, there are going to be no problems there. So let me take this one, bring it up. Okay, so that we have more of that wood present there. Okay, now let me take these. Of course, these ones are the export and import. You just need to go here to export and import, for example, the OBJ or FBX or whatever. Just right click and add to quick favorite menu. Okay, add to quick favorites, and if you press Q, it's going to be here. The first two ones are import and the second ones are export. Okay, export, make sure that selected only so that it doesn't export this mannequin with them as well. So create a folder. Okay, and then just name this whatever you want. Scale, let it be to all of these, and the important option is triangulate mesh. When you press this, it's going to first triangulate these using a modifier like so. Excuse me. Like so. It will triangulate them and import them to ZBrush so that they do not have any problems. So now I'm gonna pause now and see you in the next one where we import these to ZBrush and try to sculpt them. Okay, see you there. Okay, now here's the very basic blockout in place. Of course, it looks generic, but when we bring that to ZBrush, it's going to make a lot of more sense because we're going to sculpt a lot and then make sure that we have enough variation in place. So we have many of these and we exported to an OBJ and made sure that the triangulation was activated. So now I'm going to bring the ZBrush, and here's the user interface. Yours might be different than mine, because I just did a bit of customization on the UI. So let's import the mesh. Okay, here it is. And then other than being faceted, and it means that there's not much geometry in here to work, it looks fine. And you see, because we activated the triangulation, everything has been imported correctly. So there's a bit of customization in here. You do not need to know all about it, except for the fact that, for example, Dynamesh that I use a lot for distributing geometry all over the place is located in here in Geometry tab and Dynamesh. And because I use that a lot, I brought it to this UI. So to bring that, you just go to this preference, config, and then enable customization. And then whenever you have a button that you want to use a lot, you just hover over and then Control Alt like so, and bring that to viewport like so. You are able to use that, and whenever you do not want something, just Control Alt drag to the viewport to delete that. And then after making sure that it's going to look all right, disable the customization and a store config, so that every time you open ZBrush, the same palette is going to load. So there are some buttons that I have brought in here. For example, one of them is split to parts, which I'm going to use right now. So this split to part is in subtools tab, and then it's going to be under split and split to part like so. And I have brought it to here, and if I press, it's going to pop up with an error. Doesn't matter. Now you see it has been just divided into the creating kit. For example, now that I have rock separated, I could zoom on them using F and so on. So for example, this one, we could use Dynamesh to activate the sculpting mode on a better mesh. And this is it. So we have a lot of these. Let me see how many of them we have. We have something close to 40 subtools to be sculpted. And we are going to sculpt these and make sure that they are not really just the same. So we create as much variation as possible. So whenever I saw something, for example, these brushes that I have brought in here, I will explain. For example, one of the brushes that we use regularly is the Trim Smooth Border. But in order to find it, you want to go to Lightbox and then Brushes. And then in the Brushes tab, you want to go for Trim and Trim Smooth Border. It's in here. If you want to bring that to viewport so that every time you load, you should copy that into the Startup ZBrush folder. So let me just explain the process, because there are some brushes, for example, these orb brushes that we might use, for example, orb slash to bring some cuts into the wood. So let me hide everything. Dynamesh on a bigger scale. Okay. Now you see there's a bit of crack on the wood. So this does not exist in ZBrush by default. So you want to install them. So let's see. There's a ZBrush brushes text file in your project file, and then you need to download it from here. And they are free, and you do not need to pay anything. And whenever you saw a price tag, just go for 0, enter 0, and you should be fine. Download these and you will get the zip file. For example, for the orb brush pack, you just get these brushes. You want to take your orb brush pack folder or the existing content that exists in the folder. And if you want them to be available every time you open ZBrush, you want to go to Z Startup here and then brushes folder, brush presets. Okay, here they are, the orb brushes that I have pasted in here. Z Startup brush presets. Just paste them here so that every time you load ZBrush and press B, you are able to see them here. And then one more thing, if you just use a brush and you want to drag it into viewport to here to use it, you want to select it from here and just using the customization drag it to the viewport to use. And for something like trim smooth border that doesn't exist in the viewport by default in the startup folder, you want to go to your brushes, and this is the same as opening the lightbox. You see in here we should go for brush folder and then trim, find it in here, and it's the trim smooth border. Just copy and go back to your startup folder and then brush presets and paste it in here so that every time you load ZBrush, it's going to be available. Okay, the brushes that we use regularly are trim smooth border, dam standard, these orb brushes, and you want to download these orb brushes and install them the way that you just saw. Okay, let me Control Z to go back and see what we have here. And these are the buttons that I use regularly, and whenever I wanted to use one of them, I just tell you where that exists and how you can grab it and bring it to viewport. For example, this back face mask, which we're going to use a lot, is, let me go for Dynamesh. Whenever we drag alpha, this is the method of drag alpha. You see, it has affected the back side. Sometimes you do not want that. So you go for back face mask and drag alpha. And now if you take a look, you see it's not affecting this back side. Of course, it's affecting in here because we were using that on a high intensity. But you see that it's not affecting the back side. So this back face mask exists in here. Brush tab, auto masking, and then back face mask. Just enable customization and bring that to viewport so that you can use it a lot. And that is a great brush to use. Great brush option, excuse me. So now we are going to start sculpting, and I feel like starting by one of these wooden pieces. Okay, now if I just go for Dynamesh on a resolution, and these are the buttons that exist with Dynamesh in the geometry tab. You see Dynamesh, resolution, polish, blur, and all of that. So if I Dynamesh on this low resolution, you see we're not getting a good silhouette. It just breaks the silhouette, as well as we do not have a lot of really good shapes to work with. So sometimes you need to bump up the intensity. For example, now let's go for double of that, and you see now it's much better, but still we need more. So let me, now you see, because we have enough geometry, it preserves the shapes. And if you just zoom on your geometry, you see it's evenly distributed polygons, and we could go for a greater sculpting in here. So because the back face mask is activated. Okay, now in order to sculpt, we need the trim smooth border to chip some of these edges, but we are not going too far because not a lot of edges are so sharp. For example, even something that is manufactured in a company by machines, it's not having a lot of these sharp 90-degree edges, let alone for something like a wood that belongs to ages ago. So we need to chip the edges as much as we could to make that more interesting. And of course, we are going to use a lot of alpha brushes as well. These alpha brushes are downloaded. Of course, they were free images that I downloaded from net and processed them to be used as height map. And they will really help to get that realistic look, because if you want to sculpt everything by hand, it's going to take a lot of time and the result is not going to be that good because you need to put a lot of time. So you want to go for a standard brush, and this one is going to use alpha, and then imports an alpha. And these are some of the brushes that I use regularly, and whichever of them that I used, I will provide with the project files to you. They are, for example, wood brushes, whatever that you might use to create a good result. Okay, now you see, by using that and bringing that in here, we are able to get a very convincing result, but it needs a bit of processing. So they were some free images that I downloaded from net and just processed them to be height maps. And we're going to use these in the process as well. So if I bring that, you see how good of a silhouette it changes. And if I compare that to other pieces, you see now it's looking a lot better. So let me Control Z to go back. The first maneuver that we're going to do is chipping the edges to make sure that they are not just like these 100% perfect angles. And I really suggest you to start with lower resolution because it's a lot easier to manage the silhouette with the lower resolution, and as you go to details, just increase the resolution and go for millions and sculpt details. But for manipulating the big shapes, we need a lower resolution. So here's the way that we are going for, and you can go for an alpha as well. Bring that. This will make sure that the sculpting is going to be rougher, and since we're going to sculpt wood, it's going to be rough. So now you see we are able to manipulate the edges like so, and you do not want all of the edges to be the same basically height, or you do not want to chip all of the edges just like the same, because it really defeats the purpose. You do not want them to be like the same because it looks ugly and really not that okay. So you want to make sure that you have enough variation for them. Okay, because if you just take all of the edges and just sculpt like so, it's going to look not that okay because you need variation. And using trim smooth border, you're able to add a lot of variation. Whenever you saw that you need to zoom, just zoom and try to chip the edges like so. And if you want to save more time, you can really take this as a symmetrical piece. For example, now that we sculpted this, we could duplicate it over to here. And sculpting is good to be in passes. For example, we divided in 3 main passes: big shapes, medium shapes, and smaller shapes. For example, the big shapes are the ones that you are able to see from far away. The medium shapes are the shapes that you see from medium distances. And the small and details are the ones that when you zoom on an object, you are able to see them. So it's good first to go for big shapes, big changes, and for big shapes you want to be on lower resolution because that way it's much easier to manipulate the shape, and that would be a lot more manageable than increasing the resolution to something like millions and try to sculpt like that. And then whenever you made sure that it's going to be okay, just go for medium and small shapes. And a lot of times you could leave the tiny details for texturing phase in Painter, because there you are able to add a lot of fine details that would take a lot of time to sculpt by hand in ZBrush. So you want to make sure to see what purpose you are sculpting for. Do you want to sculpt it all by hand, or do you want, for example, to leave a pass for Painter for texturing? Okay, these are the ones that you want to make sure that you have in mind. Okay, you see how these edge sculpt gives characteristics to the object. From what that looked really like manufactured object to something that is much more natural. Okay, now let's go for these as well. And whenever you want to add using trim smooth border, hold down Alt, because trim smooth border is a subtractive mesh, and if you try to paint with it, it's going to subtract from the mesh. So if you hold down Alt, it's going to reverse that functionality. And now that it's a subtractive mesh, it's going to be additive, and whenever the brush is additive, it's going to convert it to subtractive. And there are places that nobody ever is going to see. For example, this bottom piece in here, nobody's going to see that. So why really taking time to sculpt that when nobody ever is going to see? So these are what you need to consider when sculpting. And if the piece that you are sculpting is a generic one, and it means that it's going to be repeated a lot in the scene, you do not want to have a lot of specific details. For example, something like this. If you are going to use this prop 10 times in your scene and you have such a visible detail, it's going to look not that okay, because everybody is going to notice that you have used the same mesh over and over again. So if that is a unique prop, just add as much as unique details that you want. But if it's something that is not going to be unique and it's going to be repeated a lot of times, you just want to make sure that not a lot of unique details are present there. Okay, let's take a look. And I'm happy with this first pass of detail that we added in here. And you see how good of silhouette change we have done here. Now let's go for someplace else. We could do something in order to save a bit of time. We could take these, for example, when we sculpt it fully, we will duplicate it to this side to make sure that we save much time as well. And then we will add details to that one as well. For example, bring this one to 70-80% of completion, and then duplicate it here, remove some details, add details, so that we save a bit of time as well, because this is for game development. And in game development, you want to make sure that you use your resources. So now I'm going to leave this for now with this silhouette change and go for sculpting these. And because I want them to be the same object, I'm going to dynamesh them, and that dynamesh will make sure that they are joined together and they are the same mesh. So let me see. This is it. Now we need to merge them. So there's a merge button in here. Merge visible is going to merge all of them, but merge down is going to merge the subtool that you have with the subtool that is connected to it. So it's in here, merge, similar, or whatever. And then now, let me see, I'm going to take this, merge down, and okay, you see now it merged them together. Now let me take this one to see which one it is. Okay, that's here, merge down. Now these are the same object. And then this one as well. Let's merge them. Okay. Now let me see where this one is. Okay, merge down, and just take a look, and you see now this is one object. Now this looks faceted a bit, doesn't matter, because if we press Dynamesh, you see it's going to merge all of them. Now this is one mesh. So if I just bump up the intensity to 1000, for example, and Dynamesh, it's going to preserve the shape a bit more. Now you see these are just like belonging together. And if I try to sculpt here, it's going to affect all of the meshes. Okay, but the mesh is faceted a bit. Let's bump up the intensity a bit more and reDynamesh. So let's go back. Okay, and go on a bigger resolution. Okay, it was needed because we need a perfect transition in here. Now these are part of the same mesh and they are not a different object. So there's a polish button in here as well, which you could press to polish the mesh, which is it. Okay, and the polish is going to be found in here in deformation tab and polish. They are these polish brushes or polish options that I have placed from here to here. So if you want, you can just see what they do, and they look awesome. So now let's reDynamesh once more to redistribute the polygons a bit better, and you see we have different polygons in here. If this is something that you want, just keep it, but if it's not, Control W to make sure that all of the polygroups are the same. Okay, now it's time to go and try to, this one is sculpted as well. So this polish has a couple of options. One is using this method and one is without it. So if I just use polish, say it tries to smooth the brush, smooth the object, but if you use that too much, it's going to make it look like plastic. We just wanted something to really get that to a place that it's not that faceted, and then from this way we are going for the trim smooth border and making sure that the object is going to look all right. For example, trying to work on these areas of transition. Because it looks like plastic. So we need to refine them. Okay. And then some edge sculpt is okay as well. And because the meshes are combined, it take a bit of time to rotate around them. But doesn't matter because the end result is going to be what's mattered. So now let's increase the brush scale, and first we could smooth using shift and then a bit of edge damage on the brush, on the mesh, excuse me. And there's something that I noticed is that sometimes when you, just for some unknown reasons, it might just be the case that the rotation around objects, it gets a bit buggy. So for fixing that, you could just go for transformation and activate and deactivate local transformation to see if that works for you or not. So that worked for me, and now I'm able to zoom on the object and try to sculpt on them. So let's go for trim smooth border again, and now it's much easier to sculpt in these tricky areas of transition. And later on, when we texture this, it's going to create ambient occlusion around here, cavity areas, and it's going to look a lot better than having separated the object. So now, because we used a bit of polish on this one, it's going to be looking like plastic, but do not worry, we're going to fix that. And for such areas, you could go additive as well. Now I'm holding down Alt to add to these areas instead of subtracting. Okay, whenever you see there's need to decrease the brush scale, just go for it. And whenever you need to rescale the brush, you could simply go and sculpt. And this is the first pass. Later on that we add the brushes, the alpha brushes, and all of those, it will make sense a lot more. Okay, now let's go for edges a bit. And because we do not have that much resolution, it's blurry a bit, but doesn't matter because we are going to add those alpha brushes later on and add more resolution for details. And you could go for different matte caps as well. This one is okay. It shows some of the objects that you have sculpted. And you can just take your brush, zoom in and out to see wherever you need to sculpt more or less. And since this is for game development, we'll learn some techniques to really save much more time when sculpting, including copying the object from halfway, just to make sure that we do not waste a lot of time only on a single object. Just like a canvas. And there's something to notice is that you want to elevate all of the objects together at the same time, because when you go and complete one object and return back and see there are more objects to complete, it's going to be a demotivator. So whenever you are, for example, just sculpting this one, just leave it and go elevate the others to the same level. Because you do not want to sculpt one, put a lot of time and effort in sculpting that, and then returning and seeing that you haven't sculpted the other parts. So take that as an elevator that you want to bring all of them together. And this is the first pass. I'm not really worrying about these changes because all of them could be later deleted or continued. And changing the silhouette will really sell that feel that we want. This is an old mechanism, and the chances that it has been changed in silhouette are there. So you want to make sure that the silhouette change is going to be there. Okay, now let's see. Okay, not too bad. It's good for the first pass. And now let's go for this one. And looks like because of the symmetry that we didn't apply, these two are separated. So let me take, okay, looks like they are close. So merge down. Okay, now this is one object, but if we try to sculpt, you see, if I try to sculpt, you see they are separated objects. So a quick Dynamesh will fix that. Now you see it has merged and just closed the gap. So let's see, we are going to sculpt on areas that we are going to see. For example, area that is in here hidden doesn't actually need a lot of sculpting. Rather, we want areas that are visible to be sculpted. So let's try to re-Dynamesh. No, that smooth was not a great option. And for this one as well, we could take it, sculpt halfway, and then mirror that to the other side, depending on how unique or how generic you want your result to be. And the sculpting takes a bit of time. It might be boring a bit of times, but it's a very important part of the process. You see, Dynamesh distributes the polygons evenly across the surface, so it's a great option to use it. But sometimes down the road, when we are going for details, you just want to avoid Dynameshing from there because it takes the details and blurs them a bit. So you want to make sure that you really do not blur that. So let's go for a bit of silhouette change because we do not want this to be exactly cylindrical and round. And there's of course the move brush in the brush palette. There should be around here. Press M and that is it, move brush. You could just move the silhouette with it a bit. Now you see we broke the silhouette. Let's take a look and compare that to before and compare it against this one. Okay, you see now by breaking the silhouette, it's much more natural than having something that is really generic and not that okay. Okay, let's leave this one Let's see what else needs to be sculpted. And because this lesson took a bit of time, I'm going to pause and return back to you in the next lesson by continuing to sculpt these meshes, excuse me. Okay, see you there.